Hello folks, welcome to this Musical Steps episode where, under blue suburban skies, I'm visiting Liverpool today to a street known the world over purely by its name, Penny Lane. So let's step on. Penny Lane is known throughout the world because of Paul McCartney's song of the same name. I say McCartney's song because it was predominantly written by him. All the music is by McCartney and most of the lyrics. By the time Penny Lane was released in February 1967 as a double A-side, with Lennon's Strawberry Fields Forever, the Lennon and McCartney songwriting partnership was pretty much in name only. The days of John and Paul sitting across from each other guitars in hand were over by 1967. That said, even until the Beatles split up, they still helped each other compose once the bulk of the song was completed. Not always, but sometimes. And that could be in the form of a simple lyrical suggestion. Because he sang the lead vocal, most people assume McCartney solely wrote Penny Lane, and Lennon solely wrote Strawberry Fields Forever. However, Lennon claimed in 1970 that he did have a hand in some of the lyrics of Penny Lane. I think that's possible, especially the risque lyrics. More about that later. Now, there can't be many people today that don't know the song Penny Lane, and how it seemingly references places on a fairly ordinary street in South Liverpool. One of the odd things about it, though, is pretty much all the locations referred to in the song aren't actually on Penny Lane itself. They're very close, only metres away for some of them, some a little further away, but most are not actually on Penny Lane itself. Both Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever were written and recorded around the time the Beatles were experimenting with LSD and psychedelia. So the Strawberry Fields Forever lyric, "Nothing is real," certainly applies to Penny Lane too. And as a way of unintentionally reinforcing that psychedelic disconnect from reality, even more confounding is the 1967 video made for Penny Lane that purports to show John, Paul, George and Ringo walking around Penny Lane in Liverpool. Even in the video, nothing is real. Apart from a few seconds of stock footage of Liverpool buses, most of the video was filmed in and around East London. I'm now halfway along Penny Lane's half-mile length that stretches between where Allerton Road and Smithdown Road join together at the eastern end of Penny Lane, and where Greenbank Road and North Moseley Hill Road are joined at the western end. To be more specific, halfway along Penny Lane is this street, Dovedale Road. Incidentally, the Penny Lane lyric, "Behind the shelter in the middle of a roundabout," references a bus shelter that was situated on Smithdown Road across the road from its junction with Penny Lane. We'll look at that in a bit. It's merely metres away from the Penny Lane junction across the road, but it is worth noting its precise location isn't Penny Lane itself. Also, if you've seen the video of McCartney signing his name on a Penny Lane street sign, filmed a couple of years ago when he revisited the house he spent his teenage years in, about a mile away, maybe a little bit more, over on Forth Lynn Road, the street sign he signed is located at the western end of Penny Lane, at its junction with North Moseley Hill Road. Additionally, the fireman and fire engine referred to in the lyrics were based on McCartney's memories of the fire station at Mather Avenue, around a mile south from Penny Lane. The barbershop in the song that was showing photographs of every head he'd had the pleasure to know was Bioletti's, where McCartney, Harrison and Lennon each had their hair cut as children. Incidentally, most people are aware there are two well-acknowledged smutty lyrics in Penny Lane, the fireman keeping his engine clean and the fish and finger pie. But some suggest there are other less well-known smutty lyrics too. It's been claimed the reference to the banker with his possibly dirty Mac and the barber having photographs of every head he's had the pleasure to know are further examples of John and Paul's smutty humour at the time, and this is especially true of Lennon with his love of puns and smutty jokes. So that's what I was referring to earlier on. It's quite possible when Lennon says that he had a hand in the lyric writing for Penny Lane, it might have been those sections, those lyrics. Incidentally, the double A-side of Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever was the first Beatles single since Please Please Me in 1963, 4 years before, to fail to reach number 1. Officially, it only reached number 2. However, like most things connected to Penny Lane, all is not as it seems. Nothing is real. With the release being a double A-side, the single was held at number 2, behind Engelbert Humperdinck's Release Me, even though the Beatles records sold considerably more. And the reason it stayed at number 2 was due to chart protocol, whereby only the sales of the better-selling side of a AA side were eligible. Any sales made that were decreed to be because of Strawberry Fields Forever weren't counted, and as a consequence the AA side's records' overall sales were effectively halved, and Penny Lane was forever registered as being a Beatles song that failed to reach number 1. Because of Lennon's Working Class Hero song, it's often thought that John Lennon was brought up in a very working class area. And by contrast, because everything gets contrasted, connected with the Beatles and certainly with Paul and John, it's often thought that McCartney grew up in a more middle class area. This, again, nothing is real. Nothing could be further from the truth. Menlove Avenue, where Lennon lived, is a very nice area, whereas Forthlin Road, where McCartney grew up, certainly in his teenage years anyway, this wasn't regarded as quite as good an area. That said, there's nothing wrong with the area, certainly the surrounding areas anyway. It certainly wasn't a slum. Whilst walking around Penny Lane and just filming segments for this video, I met a painter and decorator called Cliff, with Teddy, his dog. And I'm in two minds whether to call this Musical Steps video Teddy Boy, simply because of the dog and of course the Teddy Boy era that the Beatles grew up in at the end of the 1950s. Anyway, as a local to Penny Lane and something of a Beatles aficionado, I asked Cliff a couple of questions. In fact, we were talking for about 10, possibly 15 or 20 minutes. But I only thought to start filming him for around about a minute as we were concluding our conversation, prior to me grabbing a coffee. Anyway, this is Cliff and Teddy Boy. So, what is your opinion on John being a working class hero? Yes or no?
At first maybe, but then when he went to live with Aunt Mimi, he's living in a posh part of Liverpool, so yeah, I don't really know, to be fair. Had a bit of a bad upbringing, didn't he?
I don't think McCartney's area, Forthlin Road, was that bad either. No, even that's a little bit of a posh area, isn't it? Maybe not where McCartney is, but outskirts and that, Absolutely. I just want to have a picture of your dog.
Have a picture of my dog.
Come here,
this
matey.
Is Teddy.
Hiya, Teddy.
Teddy, you're on YouTube. Well, listen, it's nice chatting.
Yeah, and you,
mate.
It's
nice chatting.
What's your name, sorry?
My name's Cliff.
I'm Mark.
Nice to meet you, Mark, and I'll have a look at your YouTube channel.
This relatively affluent area of South Liverpool's Moseley Hill suburb is rich with musical history. I started this Musical Steps walk near to the junction of Penny Lane and Dovedale Road, halfway along its length, halfway along Penny Lane's length, and travelled south towards the corner of Herondale Drive and Dovedale Drive, where a junior school is located, maybe around about a 5-minute walk away. The junior school on the corner of Dovedale and Herondale Roads was attended by both John Lennon and George Harrison, though it's unlikely they would have known each other at that age, owing to the age gap between them, with Lennon being around 3 years older than Harrison. Lennon's schoolboy best friend, Pete Shotton, also attended Dovedale School. In 2001, Yoko Ono donated $25,000 for school refurbishments. Other celebrities that attended the same primary school are newsreader Peter Sissons, comedian Jimmy Tarbuck, and musician John Power. Musician John Power was born in the same year as Penny Lane was originally released, 1967. Power was the frontman of 1990s indie rock band Cast, and the bassist and backing vocalist for The Lars prior to that. He's now a solo artist. Another musical connection to this area is Farrokh Bulsara, or Freddie Mercury as he is infinitely better known, lead singer and songwriter from Queen. A pre-fame Freddie Mercury lived on the corner of this Penny Lane Dovedale Road, Moseley Hill area of Liverpool for a very short time at the end of the 1960s. I'll say more about the location in a moment. So I'm now heading back about a quarter of a mile northwest along Dovedale Road to its junction with Penny Lane, where a large commanding white building stands. This is Dovedale Towers, though it's not always been called that. The corner of Penny Lane and Dovedale Road is the location where 23-year-old Freddie Mercury lived at Dovedale Towers, or the Dovey, as it's known colloquially, during the latter half of 1969, when he was the singer of a Widnes-based Hendrix-style heavy blues rock band called Ibex, prior to joining what would later become Queen. From interviews I've seen with other members of Ibex, it seems that Freddie Mercury didn't actually stay at Dovedale Towers for very long, perhaps only a couple of nights. Others suggest that he was there a couple of months. Nobody seems exactly sure. Dovedale Towers takes its name from a now demolished tower from which the River Mersey and its passing ships could be seen. It was originally known as Grove House, and over the years had been an art gallery, a home for sick children, an orphanage, a Russian embassy, and a guest house. After the original owner of the building passed away, when it was known as Grove House, it became an orphanage called the Home for Incurable Children. This orphanage became the parochial hall for St Barnabas Church in 1914, and became a vital part of the community during two difficult times that spanned 2 world wars. St Barnabas Church itself, and we'll look at it in a moment, is at the eastern end of Penny Lane, across the road from the bus shelter and barber shop made famous by the song. It was during World War II the venue became known as Barney's, hosting dances and balls for locals and visiting troops, as it was now used as St Barnabas Church Hall. When it was used as St Barnabas Church Hall, Paul McCartney was a choir boy for the church. Additionally, Lennon and McCartney played at Dovedale Towers several times in 1957 with the Quarrymen, though as I've said it was known as Barney's at the time. In the 1960s, the property passed into the hands of the Higgins family, who renamed it Dovedale Towers, after a long-demolished tower that could be viewed from the Mersey. The Higgins' son, Jeff, was a prominent member of the local music scene, and he became a roadie and manager for Ibex. Freddie was a member of Ibex only for a short time in 1969. He called himself Freddie Bulsara at that time. One of the gigs Ibex played with Freddie was at Wade Deacon Grammar School for Girls, about 10 miles east from here, over in Widnes. The Wade Deacon Grammar School gig has been stated as the first time Freddie Mercury posed with his trademark bottomless mic stand. Though it's claimed by the other Ibex musicians, Mercury adopted the pose for no other reason than the basic stage equipment that they possessed in those days kept falling apart. Now, it's a bit strange, this movie, simply because after having completed maybe 3 or 4 previous Musical Steps movies on Lennon and McCartney, I wasn't really intending on doing another one, not for a while anyway, and I was really going to focus on Dovedale Towers for this particular movie and Freddie Mercury. However, the more I dug into what happened and the background to it in relation to Freddie Mercury, it does seem that it was only a short time that he was there. All the same, he was there, so it's worth pointing it out. Anyway, I'm going to finish up now as I stroll around the end of Penny Lane, where the bus shelter is and the barber shop, etc. And as you'll be able to see, even only with a rudimentary geographical knowledge of the area, Penny Lane itself has benefited considerably from the McCartney/McCartney-Lennon song. It's a fairly nondescript long road, but because of the connection with the Beatles, there is quite a thriving business area, cafes and pubs, etc. dotted around the area. I would hazard a guess that without the song, this would be just another nondescript crossroads. Anyway, I'll finish up and head back home. Now, if you've enjoyed watching this movie, it would really help me out if you could like and subscribe and even make some comments. That's the way that this channel can build, and it will mean it gives me the impetus to be able to create more content for you. Okay, right, I'll see you soon.